Hey there, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you stopping by. I'm super excited to be introducing a new friend of mine to you. Hey Rachel, how are you?
Hi, Anne. I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so delighted that you agreed. Rachel Papworth is from greenandtidy.com, and she is a professional organizer. And I thought, I really wanted to introduce somebody to our group who really just knows how to reach out to all kinds of people with all kinds of clutter issues. And 2020 being that 40th anniversary year is all about getting our stuff organized, getting our life organized. So I have a program that's coming up. It's called Soul Coaching. It starts on October 21st. And the whole point of the program is to teach people how to clear all the junk out of their trunk, right? So that's the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual sides of who we are. And so I went looking for someone who could help us with that to really dig us a little deeper into the whole concept of clutter clearing and why it's helpful. So I looked at a couple of people, but Rachel really stood out to me as being an expert in her field. So I am super delighted that you agreed to do this with me.
Oh, absolutely chuffed to be here. I really am.
Well, how did you get into this, Rachel? Like, how did you get into organizing? Like, I know that you are a professional organizer. I know that's what your trade is. I gather that I'm just reading your extensive bio here. You've got a psychology degree, which is so helpful when it comes to helping people clear their clutter out because some of them are resistant, right?
Yeah. Well, because it's all about psychology. It's all psychology.
It really is, isn't it? It truly, truly is. I think maybe you can do a whole course on teaching women how to handle their husbands who are kind of mini hoarders.
Well, there is a whole subject to cover there about how to manage things when you live with somebody who has a different level of acceptance of clutter than you do, which is pretty much everyone who lives with somebody.
I see it in numerology. I know that the ones that tend to be the guiltiest of holding on to the clutter would be the 4s and the 9s. The 9s are the ones that, excuse me, 9 life path numbers, they have a tendency to want to hang on to stuff because, what happens if somebody else needs it? It's they just like to make sure that they can share with everybody that's always got something to solve a problem with or to help somebody out with, kind of thing. So they have a tendency to hang on to stuff. And the 4s are all about security. They really like to know that they have stuff. Stuff has a tendency to make them feel secure. So
Scarcity.
Yes, the scarcity, absolutely. It's very, very big with the 4s because the 4s are all about their foundations, what they have in the bank, their money, and things that keep them safe, right? So routine and structure, that sort of thing is good. But they are also the extreme organizers, which is kind of good.
Probably me. That sounds a lot like me, I have to say.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at your chart. But so you've had a lot of experience with personal coaching and organizing, and you've created a wonderful program that we're going to introduce people to here at the end of the video. You want to stay tuned for that because it's really, really cool. But how did you get into this, Rachel? Like what?
Yeah. Well, basically, I made it up. And when I started doing it, I didn't realize anybody in the world was doing it. So I was born lucky. I was born with a mum who is really organized and who happened to be a teacher. So I was raised organized and she trained me to be organized. And it's always come very naturally to me to be organized.
Right.
But when I was kind of probably like early 20s, late teens, early 20s, when I went off to college, started living on my own, young people are not really very focused on being organized. Like being organized is not a skill that young people particularly value.
True enough.
So I used to get teased for my systems. Like one I always remember is back in the olden days, we used to audio tape records, and you'd have one on the A side and one on the B side, and it might not be the same artist on the A and the B side. And then you might have hundreds of these tapes. So if you're looking for a particular artist, you can't find it. So naturally, I alphabetized my cassettes.
Of course.
And because the A side and the B side didn't match, I made an index card system to cross-reference so that if I wanted something on the B side, I could go to the index card and it would tell me where to look for the A side. This was an obvious thing for me to do. Obviously, I got the Mickey ripped out of me by my flatmates for doing this. I kind of gradually learned to be a bit quiet about my organizing skills and actually to feel a bit embarrassed about them and think that being organized was a bit geeky and not really that great a thing to be doing. And then I moved into my own home. I moved around gradually, got a bit older, got jobs, blah, 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 moved into my first own house. And it's the house I'm still living in. And I've been living here for about 7 or 8 years. and I'd filled it up. It's a 3-bedroom house with a loft. It's only me living here.
Yeah.
And I was buying a lot of vintage clothing because I got into swing dancing, like 1940s dancing.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, really fun. So I was buying stuff on eBay, and I'd be really excited when it arrived. But behind the excitement of it arriving was a kind of anxiety about where I was going to put it. I had all the stuff in my bedroom was completely full. I had a clothes rail in the spare bedroom in front of the mirror, so you couldn't see the mirror. And there was so much stuff on the clothes rail that every now and then it would collapse. And everything. It wasn't just clothing. Like, every cupboard and drawer in my house was rammed full. And the trigger was I bought a bottle of correction fluid, like Tipex.
Yeah.
And then I found one at the back of a drawer, and I was like, I didn't know I had that. And I'm very green-minded, don't like to waste stuff. And I was like, that's it. And I did this total declutter of my house. I went through every single thing that I owned, got the house back to functioning, got it all working. And what I saw is that decluttering and organizing isn't a geeky skill. It isn't a thing to be ashamed of. It's actually what makes my life work. When my home is functioning well and efficiently, it's this springboard beneath me that enables me to get out there and live the life that I want to live. And so that was the message that I needed to share. Now, around the same time, the economy crashed in 2008, and I was self-employed already doing a different business, and the bottom dropped out of it, and I had to find a new thing to do. And I went looking for kind of what is my heart's thing that I can give the world. And I got some coaching myself, and everything I did with this coach pointed to helping people to declutter. And I was like, no, it can't be that, because I was still embarrassed about it, right? So I was like, no, please don't make me go out there and tell everybody that my thing is decluttering and organizing. My thing has to be something else. But it was so obvious that I started the business. And I started the business really tentatively and really kind of like, oh, don't make me tell people this. And I had social media channels, so I tell strangers what I was doing, but I didn't really want my friends to find my YouTube channel.
In there, seen it, done it, got the t-shirt.
But what happened, of course, was I learned more and more what value I was giving to other people. And so in the end, where I am now, I've got this kind of dual benefit where, one, I do the business that is my heart's, the thing that is in my heart to give to the world.
Yeah.
And I've learned not to be ashamed of this really key part of my personality. And now I shout about it, and I go on social media channels and I come on things like this and tell other people why decluttering and organizing is such a great thing to do. So it's been an awesome journey for me.
Well, that's amazing. In my line of work, of course, we talk about everything sort of from an energetic perspective. So stuff is made of energy, right? So I always tell people, you've got to look around your home. You've got to see what's in your home. And if you want the universe to bring you something new, you've got to be prepared to surrender something else, right? I always say we all have a trunk, right? And the trunk's full of junk. And we keep throwing stuff into the trunk. But every now and again, we have to open the trunk, and we have to take concerted effort, go in that trunk and release some stuff. And the stuff might be, it could be like, animate objects, furniture, clothing, whatever, taking up space. But it could also be people, that you're spending too much time with that really aren't serving you well anymore. You kind of outgrown them. And then sometimes it relates back to our thought processes. How many limiting beliefs do we have? It's about releasing and letting go of that. So everything is made of energy. So the more we clear out and the bigger commitment we make to releasing this stuff, the better commitment the universe has to be able to fill that void for us.
I think
that's more purposeful.
I think that's absolutely right. And from the professional organizer's perspective on that, what I see is that, so I'm somebody that would always want to deal with the causes of an issue, not with the symptoms. And clearly clutter is a symptom.
Yes.
But one of the many things that I love about clearing clutter is that your external clutter is a manifestation of your internal clutter.
Oh, hands down, absolutely.
To deal with that external clutter, you inevitably deal with all the stuff that's going on internally. So that totally fits in with what you're saying. There's all that stuff about kind of belief systems that you might need to let go of, or people that you might need to let go of, or habits that you might need to let go of. By dealing with your physical stuff, you kind of gently get into that stuff as well. So you end up dealing with the causes, even though you started with the symptoms. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think about, I used to come from a very big scarcity mentality. I always had to hang on to things because I was afraid I wouldn't have the money to buy them again. Couldn't possibly get rid of them because what happens if I needed them and I wouldn't have the money to buy it? And that kind of scarcity keeps us from growing in abundance, right? So it's kind of, some people might feel this whole clutter clearing and releasing and letting go of things is counterproductive, but really it's not. You know, you're sending out a very direct message. You know, an example of this would be, I had a clothing business in my home. You would have loved this. It was a secondhand clothing business. I wanted to stay home with my kids, so we created this business in my home, which it was a consignment shop. So people would bring me bags of clothing, and they would say, oh, you know, you just take your time and you go through it at your leisure, and I'll come back for whatever you don't take. So I would do that, right? And I would take what I didn't take from them, didn't sell, I would put it in the back room. Well, the back room started to get fuller and fuller and fuller. It was just like ridiculous. And I would have dates on those bags. And one day I went back in there and I looked at the dates in the bags. Some people had dropped stuff off like 3 and 4 years ago. Okay. But I, being the honest person I am, I didn't want to get rid of the stuff for fear that they accused me of taking it or something, right? So I just held on to it. Clearly they didn't want it. It wasn't that important to them, right? But anyway, the point was, I was trying to get my healing arts business going. I was getting kind of bored with the clothing business. And I discovered that the more I cleared out of my back room, the more my holistic business, my healing arts business grew. It was crazy. Every garbage bag that I took out, I got a new client. I swear, that's how it worked. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I thought, I think there's probably some really good reasons for that, about how it starts to affect you when you're holding on to stuff from the past. I mean, all that stuff there. Like I always say, about clearing out an attic. But if you've got a load of junk in the attic, you've literally got old, dead, stuck energy weighing on the bed. Yep. And also keeping clutter under the bed, I think it's so damaging. It's really That's where
all the Christmas presents are. Well, they'll be gone by the 26th. But I don't typically store stuff under my bed. So there you go. That's why I have a box thing that it sits on. So I can't do that. So I guess we've kind of touched on that. What's so great about decluttering and organizing anyway. I mean, all of our lives are busy.
It's that if you have a home that works, you won't be aware of it, but you will be so much more effective and fulfilled and productive and efficient and happy than if you have a home that doesn't. If you have a home that doesn't work, you will sure be aware of how it's holding you back, how much time you spend looking for stuff, how sick you are tripping up over stuff, how kind of you're sneezing all the time because it's dusty, because it's impossible to keep it clean because it's so cluttered. Like the money that you waste going out and buying stuff because you can't find the one that you've already got, or you forgot that you had it, or you found it but it got damaged because it wasn't properly stored because there wasn't room for it. Like to have a home that works it's just so freeing and it's so empowering. So the thing about decluttering and organizing is it's not an end in itself. I mean, for sure, when I have just decluttered an area, I can't stop myself going back and looking at it because I love it so much. For sure, it feels really cathartic. But the actual reason why you're doing it, what I always say is, when your home works, your life works. That is why you're doing it. That's why you're doing it.
Yeah, I've actually made a commitment to myself this year that I'm going to be sending people consumable gifts, locally made consumable gifts. Right? Yeah. They don't have to dust it. Yeah. I mean, a while they don't have to dust it.
With a lot of my friends and family, we've agreed not to exchange gifts anymore because, I mean, really, especially like my brothers, we've been exchanging gifts year after year after year. Yeah. We don't really know what each other wants, and it's all just more consumption and more destruction of the environment for no real gain, and stress because we've got to go and buy gifts for each other. And it was me, obviously, that said it one year, like, should we not give it a gift? They were like, yeah, great. So that was it.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, we've been
and actually most of my oldest friends too, we've agreed it. We don't do gifts anymore. We don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. One of the greatest suggestions years ago, I mean, I was really, 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 really broke one year, and I just didn't know how Christmas was always a big thing for me, and I just didn't have anything. I had no money really to spend. So I watched a show it was Oprah actually, and Oprah was talking about the greatest gift she'd ever received, and she said that one of the greatest gifts that she had ever received was a letter from her doorman stating that he didn't have much money, but he wanted to take the time to express to her how much she meant to him, and that he always felt good around her, and that she always made him feel important, and that sort of thing. So Oprah talked about gifts that cost nothing is the gift of time that it takes to write down what somebody means to you. And I did that year. I actually wrote letters to 4 very important people in my life at that time, and I wrapped them up, I put bows on them and I wrapped them up and I gave them to them and they were blown away by it.
That's
So
really lovely. Really
yeah,
lovely.
yeah. So anyway, but so if this whole concept of clutter clearing is so great, why is it people are so resistant to do it? What's
I
holding them
think
back?
I think it's very easy to feel very overwhelmed. We live in a society that just throws stuff at us all the time. So
Mhm.
even if you're not somebody who does a lot of shopping or set out to acquire stuff comes through the door. The
Yeah.
kids bring stuff home from school with them. Christmas happens and people that you can't stop giving you gifts, give you gifts.
Yeah.
You go to buy something and it comes with some free offer on the side. Like you just cannot stop yourself acquiring stuff. And
Mhm.
we're busy, we've got jobs and kids and community responsibilities and whatever we might volunteer for charities and we're busy people and we've got to keep fit and cook
Yeah.
nice food and our time is really full and it's just very, very easy to get out of hand. And then once it's out of hand, it seems overwhelming and you don't know where to start and you just get so you feel like it's too much and you can't do it. And the being organized is not a life skill that comes naturally to everyone. I mean, so I've because it's come naturally to me.
Mhm.
Until I started doing this job, I really saw being organized as kind of just, well, anyone can do that. It's just,
Mhm.
I couldn't see how it was something of value that I could offer because I really thought that everybody was like me. But
Yeah.
the more I do the work, the more I see that actually I'm quite unusual, that most people do not naturally organize their stuff in a way that works and they do not naturally declutter. It doesn't come naturally to most people.
Mhm.
And so once you've got into the state where you're overwhelmed, if it's not a skill that comes naturally to you, you don't know where to start and you feel hopeless. And maybe you try and do a little bit and you just kind of don't really make enough difference to feel the benefit. And then you feel even more overwhelmed. And, it just becomes this kind of negative cycle. And that stops people even getting started.
Yeah, the program that I teach, the soul coaching program, is actually designed to help take the stress out of that. Like, organizing is only one component, of course, of the whole soul coaching program, but understanding your reasons for holding on to things. In the program, we kind of teach you how to look at something and go, is this really something that's serving me well? Do I really have to have this? Is this something, and can you let it go, kind of thing? And real simple little exercises and such, as I'm sure in your course you're offering the same,
Yeah, I always say that
simple tips.
when you're sorting through things, to ask yourself 3 questions. So the first one with each item is, am I legally obliged to keep this? So it's like your birth certificate or your passport, like that, or your tax records, And the second one is, am I realistically likely to use it? And then the key there is to be realistic. So it's there's a teeniest, tiniest little chance that I just might use this one day in 10 years time. It's like, am I realistically likely to use it? And if I can't work that out, think about when I last used it, try and imagine a scenario when I would use it.
Yeah.
Imagine what happened if I got rid of it and then I needed it, how big a deal would that be? So try and be realistic. And then the final question is, do I love it? So it might not actually be something that's useful, but you just might love it for sentimental reasons because it's beautiful. And if any of those is yes, then keep it. But if it's no, it can go.
Yeah, because I think the benefit of actually finding the courage to release things, God, I went through it when my mom passed and I had to clean out her house. We went through 2 dumpsters of stuff. And some of it was really good stuff, but I mean, the time constraint and whatnot, I felt very guilty that I had to throw a lot of stuff out that probably could have been repurposed. But unfortunately, the time didn't allow for that. It was in the dead of winter, and anyway, goes on and on. But she had saved so much stuff, and people had given her so much stuff that it got crazy. Just got upset.
Yeah, I mean, that is another scenario that I come across a lot. When somebody's been bereaved and they've inherited a whole house load of stuff on top of their house load of stuff, might contain the contents of 2 people's lives. There's a lot of stuff there. Much of which will have sentimental value for them, and they're in a state of grief and bereavement. It's a very difficult time. It can be very hard for people to handle that situation.
And grief is something that can sneak up on you. It's something that hangs on for a lot longer for some people than it does for others. So there's no judgment here, and we should make this clear. There's absolutely no judgment here. If you're sitting on a pile of stuff right now, there's no judgment. There's a reason why you're hanging on to it.
Of course. And I always say to people who've been bereaved, if they can put off that process and not do it when they're in the throes of grief,
Yes,
then that is the best thing, because it's
absolutely.
very hard to do at that time. I mean, not everybody can do that. Sometimes it has to be done when it has to be done. But
Yeah.
if you can put it off until you're not in the absolute depths of your bereavement, then
Mm.
that is better. I think it makes it a lot easier.
Oh, that's very good advice, because I know we didn't have that option of time. The house sold right away, and it was just like, what, just crazy. But anyway, so a lot of people now, given COVID and everything else that's been going on in 2020, they're working out of their homes. So what kind of advice can you give to those of us who have to work out of our homes or choose to work out of our homes to make
Yeah,
life a little bit simpler?
I think it's been really challenging for a lot of people, and actually quite a few of my friends have had to transfer to working from home, and I've worked from home for 23 years now, so I'm very used to it. I love it. I've had a proper, you can see I'm in a proper office. I've got a proper office in my home, so I'm totally set up for it. But in talking to some of my friends who've transferred to working from home, it reminded me of some of the challenges that I had to deal with and had to find ways around when I first went self-employed, first started working from home. So it's a really good question. And people who don't have the luxury of a proper workspace at home, it can be really difficult. So what's the danger? I mean, obviously there are some things about working at home that are absolutely lovely, but the difficult thing about it is that you've put your home life and your work life into the same place, and they start to overlap each other. So your home starts,
you don't have a door closed.
the office starts to come into the home, and neither of them then function properly, and they impede. You feel like you're failing at both of them, and it's a nightmare. So the answer is zoning, and it's zoning both your space and your time. So the space is the kind of easier one to get your head around. So it's really important to have a space to work in. Now, you may not be able to make it a whole room, but you might be able to make it like a dining room table or a section of the dining room table. If at all possible, make a space that is yours, your workspace. Nobody else is allowed to touch it. Ideally, you screen it off, so you put something in the way so you can't even see it, and try and hold on to that space. Now, some people can't even do that. They might not. They might be living in a shared house, or just because of their circumstances, they just can't have a dedicated space. So in that case, you want to create a portable space, an office in a box. So you want to get a crate or a box, have everything that you need for your work in there, and you get the space you're going to work in for that day. You get it all out of the box. You do your work, and then you put it all back in the box, and nobody else is allowed to touch that box. That is your box. So that's zoning your space. And then the other thing you have to zone is your time. This I was really reminded of. I was talking to one of my best friends, and she's a lawyer, and she was talking about how she would get up, and then before she knew it, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She was still trying to deal with the day's emails. You know how email is really everything that you do. It pulls you in. She's in her pajamas. She never even got anything to eat. She feels all sticky and gross, and her mouth's all horrible, and she hasn't anything to eat. It's just absolutely hideous. And I was like, God, I remember that happening. And so what you have to do is zone your time. And that means things like you do not open email or social media until you are up, breakfasted, dressed, and ready to go. It doesn't matter how much you tell yourself, you won't let it suck. You're just going to check this one thing. It will suck you in, and then it will be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'll be in exactly that state. So they have that rule: do not start before you're ready to start. And then have those set times. So I'm going to stop for lunch at 1 o'clock for an hour or an hour, and I'm going to finish work at 5:30. And I mean, I'm not saying, I know, in real life sometimes things have to be shifted, but have those rules for yourself. Have that, just like you would go out of the door and go to the office and work for a certain amount of time and come back home again. Zone out that time at home as well. And then the final thing is just to be a bit easy on yourself. So if you're not used to working from home, if you're not set up to work at home, and you've got your kids at home as well, and your partner's also working at home, and there are things around that make it very difficult to do the job, and your productivity is suffering, be honest with your co-workers and your boss about it. I'm sure they will understand. I hope they'll understand. If they don't understand, then you need to get a new job, because they should understand. So be honest. Say, I'm really sorry. I know this isn't coming in as, I'm not, working as efficient as I used to, but it's really difficult. This situation's really difficult. Just don't try and pretend that you're coping better than you are, because that just causes you stress.
Right. That's really good advice. I think prioritizing your time is so, you're absolutely right. And I'm guilty of it. I do get sucked into the email train first thing when I wake up, I mean, whatever. I find myself doing that. And then, I'll stand at the counter to eat my lunch, which is scarf some stuff down. I don't really value the meal. And it's it's terrible, you know, and it's the lack of balance, right?
It's not
Lack of
good for you.
balance.
It's just not good for you. I mean, the social media rules, I have really strict rules on myself about, and I use social media for work, but I
Yes.
have really strict rules about when I can check it. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty good with them. Like, so at the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, because there was kind of so much going on and it all felt so anxious, and I started breaking those rules, and I started spending more time on social media and time on social media outside of the times that I'm supposed to spend on social media.
Yeah.
And it was not good for me. And I had to really, I caught myself after, it took a while, but I caught myself and was like, no, I have to reinstate my rules, because I know it just makes me stressed and anxious and unhappy if I don't stick to those rules. So, you know, put them back in place again to
Well,
watch it.
yeah, and one of the things for 2020 with this 4 universal year that we're in, it's asking us all to revisit our foundations. So we're supposed to be revisiting our financial platforms, our work, our education, our relationships, the condition of our home, condition of the working space that we're in, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making time to prioritize our time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so easy, like you said, to get sucked down that whole bunny hole with the social media and such. But even my friend, excuse me, my friends who are social media managers, they even put in their emails to say, I check my social media this time, and this time. And
Well,
that's it, right?
that's say everything. Like the
Yeah.
professionals, they're the ones that know you got to have the rules. You know, that makes
Well,
sense to me.
exactly. And I guess, and what I was trying to go to, I lost track of my thought there for a second. It's about setting boundaries. And I learned this early on when I had my secondhand clothing store out of my home. My neighbors would come over in the morning and sit down and want to have a cup of coffee. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is my business, right? I'm not leaving my home. So I have to make money in my home. Therefore, this is my business. So you can't just come over here and be the coffee club.
That
Right?
is a real risk when you're self-employed.
It
Like,
really, really is.
it kind of
Yeah.
feels like that you can take any time off, you know, like because you set
Yeah.
your own hours. So, you know, if somebody wants to phone up for a chat on a Wednesday morning, or they suggest going for a coffee on a Thursday afternoon, you can do that. Whereas if you worked set hours for somebody else, you couldn't. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy that flexibility too, but
Yes.
there is a risk that you can kind of use, even, you know, I can start seeing my own time
Yes.
as more flexible than, say, my partner, for example, is in a job, so he's not self-employed. So sometimes we'll be arranging to go away, and I'll think, well, I can actually, you know, I'll just take Friday afternoon off. You know, I can do that. He won't be able to do it, but I can. And then I think, well, I can, but if I keep doing that,
oh yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. You're right. You have to be really careful about your boundaries, and you have to watch them yourself as well as making sure that other people don't step over them.
But boundaries, you know, I'm going through a bit of a drama with my family right now, and so I'm the go-to girl. You know, the phone's ringing or the texts are coming or whatever, and it's taking up a lot of my time. And it was just yesterday when I finally went, time out, guys. I'm taking a back seat to this for a little while. You guys all work it out, and this is causing me a bit of stress. I'm drawing the line here. And you know what? I felt great. My husband asked me this morning, how you feel? I'm like, I feel great. I'm not getting any drama calls. Like I've set the boundaries. And I said, don't bug me, right?
I think they then just go and sort themselves out as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's not our responsibility, right?
Because actually you can end up just enabling other people's stuff, can't you? If
Yeah.
Have their own boundaries, then they don't have to set their boundaries either.
That's it. That's absolutely it. So in the next little while, Rachel and I are going to do another video where we're going to really, you know, expand on this topic a little bit more. So we're going to be talking about, you know, what do people find the hardest to declutter and organize, and how can Rachel give us some tips to help us with that? We're going to be talking about the 7 biggest clutter clearing mistakes. Oh, I can't wait to get into that and how we can avoid them. And we are talking about students and how students can get organized. We're talking about, again, you know, people working from home. What about when you're working with, or when you're living with somebody who is an extreme clutterholic, as Rachel calls them? She's coined that phrase. So, you know, what up with that? Like we seem to keep building sheds and greenhouses and stuff for our property. Then it just seems like the clutter just keeps going out there, and it's great. I don't have to look at it, but we still have it. Right?
You're so right.
Is there help for me? So why do people tend to forget to declutter and all these kinds of good stuff? So it's really, really valuable information. So look out for that. I want to draw attention to Rachel's website, www.clutterfree30.com. You do want to check that out. She's got a really cool program where you can actually take her course on how to clutter clear. So she's the expert. You want to be her. I'm sorry? And it's free, yeah. And clutter free is free. Yeah, we love that. So you got to go and sign up for that. I want you to check out my program. I only have 2 spots left for the soul coaching program that is starting on October 21st. We're going to be decluttering our minds, our bodies, our spirits. We'll be working through 4 different elements. We'll be looking at the element of air, which is mental clutter. We'll be looking at the element of water, which is emotional clutter. We'll be looking at the element of fire, which is spiritual clutter, and of course, earth, which is our physical clutter. So there's clutter in all areas of our personality. So you might want to check that out. You can just go to www.annperrynumerologist/soul-coaching. There's a tab there for it, so you can check it out. But I'd love to see you guys join us. Thanks so much, Rachel. Really, really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. It's been really good fun.
Oh, it has been fun. I can't wait to do the next one.
Me too.
All right. So make sure you check Rachel out, www.clutterfree30.com. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. Tune in next time. Bye for now.